How would you define the corporate culture of Amazon?
Innovative, they are customer obsessed.
From the very first-hand experience, once again, what is that and why Amazon using the 6-pagers? Where, how, and why is it so cool?
It makes you think of what you want to say.
And we're like dozens of the people like you, and you have to, dance in the same rhythm.
And this again is an excellent forcing function to make a product manager think. Because when you write a press release, you're working backwards from the customer. You're writing a press release for the customers.
How practically and what should I do to anticipate the need of the customer?
Way is to talk to your customers. Simply talk to your customers. Talk as much as you possibly can. Get feedback from them.
Guys, hello everyone, it's без вот этого всего, and today we are talking in English, which is not usual, and you will ask me why, and the answer is that we have quite unique guest today. With us, Amit Purahit. Nice to meet you, Amit, and great for having you here. Amit is a former top manager of Amazon and one of the biggest experts in the product management, so today we'll talk a lot about the product management and this stuff.
Absolutely. It's great to be here, and sorry to make you practice your English a bit more.
Well, that's always useful for me. Let's start first with your experience, because I'm really interested in where you start your career. What were the main milestones of your career, and how it developed over the time?
Absolutely. So I actually had my start as a software developer. Believe it or not. So
Really?
I have a tech background.
Which language?
And this was IBM AS400 systems, probably before you were born.
Yeah, I know that one. I worked with the banks, and banks still use it.
Okay, yeah. So mainframes, IBM mainframes, IBM AS400 systems, right around the time of Y2K, if you remember, turn of the century. I was involved quite a bit in making sure that the world didn't burn down during Y2K. So I got my start there, and then moved on to more of a business role when I joined Amazon, and from business to operations to product management. So that's been the journey.
How it happened that you shifted from the tech guy to the business guy?
It was actually, I was working for a company called Office Depot in South Florida in the US. And I was actually tasked to develop their intranet system. And during the course of that project, I was also asked to set up live chat on their online platforms. And again, while I started helping them with that, it became very obvious that I was more inclined beyond just coding and software development, that I wanted to be more on the business side of things as well. And so it was a very natural segue that I did from pure coding into more of operations and business development, and then eventually product management. When I joined Amazon, which was towards the end of 2008, that's when I actually made a strong pivot towards more of roles in business development, and then eventually became a product management head there.
Are you still able to code?
I unfortunately not, but I do want to go back and tinker here and there when I can. But yeah, it's still very, very dear to me. One of my favorite languages, again for those people who are around the same age as I am, was COBOL. Not very many people like to code in COBOL, but
some companies still use it. I've seen on LinkedIn the guy from the very fancy company. He was posting the role of the COBOL developer and asking whether you every place in the world. I mean, we will hire you because you're probably one of the last people in the world using it.
If you show me some code from COBOL, I may surprise myself and be able to code in it.
Wow. Amazing. So, and your last role in Amazon, what you were doing there? What you were responsible for?
I was responsible for customer experience on the Amazon Turkey web site. That's what it was. At Amazon, clearly, I've done a variety of roles. I started more on the account management side. So back in 2008, Amazon used to manage e-commerce websites for companies like Target.com in the US, MarksandSpencer.com in the UK. So their e-commerce platforms were managed by Amazon at the, then. And so that was my job, essentially to work with one of those accounts.
So they totally outsource it to
Correct,
Amazon.
correct. They used to do it at that point in time, till such time that it became very clear that Amazon was directly competing with Target and directly competing with Marks and Spencer and all that. And then it didn't make any sense to have that outsourcing thing going with Amazon. But back then it was. So that was my first job at Amazon. And then I started working in the marketing team of Amazon, which is where I got more international experience, working in Amazon markets like China, Japan, Europe, obviously in the US. And then after the marketing job, I was asked to move to China. Moved to China for 6 years.
Wow.
Worked on Amazon China. My first job in Amazon China was to launch online payment methods. So essentially making sure that the Amazon China retail website was integrated with all the major banks in China. That was my first job. And then I was asked to run operations, the China business. And then I was asked to launch the Prime program in China. So I've done clearly various things from, going all the way back when I started in account management to Prime international expansion to working in Amazon Pay to finally improving customer experience for Amazon Turkey.
How was it in China when you joined it? It was the Chinese team worked with you or international team or?
No, the local team. So the local team was all Chinese.
And how was it for you? I mean, from the management perspective, because you probably haven't had the experience before with the Chinese prior to getting there.
No, never. I mean, I did work with different cultures even before joining Amazon. When I was working for this company, like I said, called Office Depot, based out of South Florida. One of my jobs was to actually manage their e-commerce websites in Europe. So even before Amazon, I was exposed to working in international markets. But the Chinese experience was very different because this was the first time I went and lived and worked in China, managing a company like Amazon. So it was culturally a very different experience, very enriching experience. I spent 6 years there. And learned a lot about the market, about the people, about the culture. Fascinating country.
From the management perspective, what's the biggest difference between managing let's say, American people and managing the Chinese team?
My experience was that at least, when you are the top manager in a company in China, people under you usually look up to you to set the right tone and set the right path.
Yeah, so they're waiting for you to
They're
set
waiting
what
for
to
you.
do.
Exactly. And that's what I saw quite a bit. I also saw the culture of working very hard to a point where sometimes I used to ask my teams not to work hard, but work more smart.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I did notice that a bit. And then lastly, what I would say is that they tend to follow a certain path. Like when you lay the path out in front of them, they are pretty good about making sure that whatever is told to you, they go and do that. They follow orders well.
Yeah. I always was curious how one should foster the culture of being more growing the initiative over there, because I think it's one of the hardest tasks you can imagine in the Chinese culture as a manager, because normally exactly what you said, they are waiting for you, and if you want them to make it on their own, it would be quite something.
Yes. I'll just add, I guess I'll add one more thing in that you have to be careful how you communicate things to your team there.
Yeah.
Like Amazon is known to be a very direct company. Like the style of communication is extremely direct. they don't like to sugarcoat things. They say the way things are,
If
right?
something is shitty, you'll be told.
Yeah,
that
then
it's
you
shitty.
just look that is not good and that's not accurate, and you need to go and rework it or change it and all of that. And I remember my first few months at Amazon in China, I had trouble because I was extremely direct with my team members, and
So
they
were
didn't
shocked.
take it. Yeah, they were shocked, and sometimes they'd get upset, and so I had to dial that back a little bit when I was living and working there. But the interesting thing is, company like Amazon, you want to maintain the culture of the company, irrespective of which country you live and work in. So that was a very good balance to have that, to maintain the company culture while making it a tad bit softer because of the difference in the culture in the country.
So that brings us to the next question about Amazon and getting like to the bigger picture. How would you define the corporate culture of Amazon, and how would you define it as a company, like for those who didn't work there? And I'm asking that because there are a lot of rumors of Amazon from people who didn't work there but somehow read the book or have heard something on a podcast. So from your very first-hand experience, how would you define the culture of that company?
I spent close to 12 years in Amazon. That in Amazon years is a very, very long time. If you ask me to summarize the culture in the company, I would say it's innovative, they're customer obsessed, and they're constantly trying to optimize on the processes because they try to pass the savings from the retail business to the customers. It is a tough culture. It's not for everybody. That much I'll tell you, because it's, they drive you hard because they're trying to come up with new products and services in the market. They're constantly looking to disrupt the standard that you see, that you and I are used to for years. And in the process of that, they push the team really hard. So it's a customer obsessed culture that pushes the envelope and that is always trying to look for new opportunities everywhere.
What helped them to maintain this culture, given the fact that they are growing as a hell? I mean, it was at some moment of time, it was a small company, then it was a mid-sized company, and then immediately it was hundreds, thousands of employees, and they still maintain this culture. So what helped them to maintain the culture?
They have leadership principles is what they call them. I believe they have about 14 of them right now. And the company, every single employee in the company lives by these leadership principles in everything that they do in the company, from hiring to performance management systems to evaluating the business. They are constantly speaking leadership principles. So I'll give you a simple example. One leadership principle is dive deep. And so the company is obsessed with making sure that they know the details. Like even the top managers in the company are expected to have the ability to dive deep. They can't only be talking about strategy. They need to understand what is happening with the business, why one metric is moving in a certain direction, what can be done to change that. And so exactly like this, they are constantly making sure that each of the leadership principle that the company has, the employees are mastering those and they're living by those.
With this example of the top manager diving into such details, on one hand, I understand that it helps you to always understand what is happening in a company, but on the other hand, didn't it somehow foster the culture of the micromanagement and letting you dive into those details, which somehow probably you don't even need to know, but when you know them, you're trying to somehow fix the things?
So that's a good question. And what top managers at Amazon do is they dive into details of problems that are brought to their attention. So for example, I'll give you a real life example of how I dealt with things like this when I was working there. When Jeff Bezos was the CEO, when I was working at Amazon, Jeff had this habit of sending question mark emails. If there was something broken on the website, or if Jeff got a complaint from the customer. So customers were encouraged to write to Jeff directly. jeff@amazon.com was the email address.
Nice.
And anybody who used Amazon could write to him. When Jeff got an email like that, it's happened with me. When I was working in the marketing team, I was managing the recommendation systems of the CRM in the marketing organization. So all these emails that you get from Amazon saying, hey, you looked at this item, maybe you will find this interesting. That system was being managed by me worldwide. One day, my boss, who was the VP of marketing, got the question mark email from Jeff. So he would literally send one email with just a question mark. He would forward that email, which is a complaint. And then that would start a series of things where my boss then sends me that email and tries to figure, okay, what is going on with this?
With another question mark.
Another question mark. Or maybe a line for me saying, okay, please try to look into this. Let's get this fixed. And then I would go and work with my teams to try and figure out what is happening. It's not that Jeff was diving into all the details of what's going on in the company. But when something like this was brought to Jeff's attention, I would have to report to him on exactly what happened and why it happened the way it did. So most managers or most top managers in companies forward an issue or an email like that and say, okay, get this fixed.
Yeah.
And then they would get a reply back saying, okay, this is fixed. And then for most part, they'd be happy. For Jeff, he needed a detailed explanation on what exactly happened, how did we fix it, and how will we make sure it doesn't happen again. And he would need to know those details. So that's what I mean by dive deep.
That's interesting, but how many hours you guys work there per day? Like 25? That's with this kind of approach. I imagine the Jeff Bezos who is able to receive all those emails from, I don't know, millions of people probably. That brings you to the fact that you probably should be working like 24/7. Right?
Well, no, that's the perception people get. But then if you're optimized on processes and if you're optimized on your teams and the way you work, you really don't have to work 24/7.
So you had a work-life balance.
Yeah,
stuff, right?
Look, the work-life balance, it's very interesting that you bring up that word. Because back then, even at Amazon, we used to call it work-life balance. But some point, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, Jeff in fact came back and he said, let's not call it work-life balance, let's call it work-life harmony. Because balance, if you think about the definition of the word balance, that in itself says that you have to compromise one to be able to manage the other.
Okay.
And his logic is, why can't both live in harmony? Why can't you have a life where your work is in harmony with your personal life? And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah.
So if you can find that balance, and it's not easy. By any means, I've had times at Amazon where I have worked really, really long hours, late into the night, early in the morning, where I've had to sit back and think, saying, hey, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? So those things have come up for sure. But the amount of learning that I've gotten from that company is just absolutely tremendous. A friend who's still at Amazon and I were talking just the other day, and he put it actually very brilliantly. He said that it's like going to an MBA school, but with real practical experience, where you're working in a company where everything, all the case studies that you're doing are actually real life events, but it's literally going to one of the top MBA schools in the world. So people get so much knowledge from like a business school, when they do a program for a year or 2 years or 3 years, just imagine being in a company like Amazon where you're constantly learning for 10, 12, 14, 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah, another question about Amazon and its famous 6-pager culture. So personally seen a lot of places where people have heard something about those 6-pagers, and then losing the sense of why and what for they were created for. So from the very first-hand experience, once again, what is that and why Amazon using the 6-pagers? Where, how, and why is it so cool?
This is one of my favorite topics because I'm a massive believer in the culture of 6 pages. I did not know of this concept till I joined Amazon. Clearly, all my previous companies that I worked for, they were all into PowerPoint slides, and you jot everything down, you summarize what you want to say, and you share the slides and you talk through the slides. It was a bit of a shock when I joined Amazon, when I was introduced to this culture. But I soon became a huge proponent and a fan of it, it makes you think of what you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to think. Let me just put it that way. It forces you to think really hard of what you want to write down on a piece of paper. When you write in prose, which is what it is. You write in prose instead of writing a bullet point.
Mm-hmm.
When you write in prose, you're thinking, and when you think, you get clarity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is why I like the concept of 6 pages. Is that you write a strategy out, you write it in the form of a 6-pager or prose. It forces you to think hard whether your strategy makes sense or not. What I typically tend to do is before writing a 6-pager, I try to finalize the template of that 6-page document. And the way I do it is by writing questions down first without doing anything. So let's say, give me an example. Ask me what would you like me to write? Let's say, just throw it out there.
Let's say we are coming up with a new product for I don't know, the retail food tech company, and we are trying to build this new product for some specific segment of the customers. So me asking you to come up with this new product which will help us to grow the revenue and the stuff.
Okay, if we become even more specific, what kind of new product? So let's say we are thinking of a new product where we get food delivered within 20 minutes.
Let's say. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the strategy.
Okay.
And you're saying that, okay, please write a strategy document to explain what the concept is and why this would work. Very simply, what I would do is, for something like this, I would first write down the questions I want answered. Mm-hmm. Like literally write down the questions. Don't think about the answers. Just write down your questions. What are we proposing would be my first question. Mm-hmm. Why are we proposing this product? Why do we think this product will work in this market? Who offers this product right now in the market, and in what form? What do the unit economics look like for this product on our platform? What are the risks that this product may have, during launch? What is the effort required for us to launch this? How will we launch this? Mm-hmm. How will we test it? So just in the span of a minute, I was able to rattle out about 10 FAQs to you, like frequently asked questions. So this is what I do. Mm-hmm. I try to formulate all of this in my head, and then I start figuring out how to answer each and every one of them.
Okay.
And so if you write it in this frequently asked questions and answers format, you can build out a pretty good comprehensive strategy of anything that you want to do. Mm-hmm. And then you get rid of the FAQs, that becomes your document. Mm-hmm. That is actually a document. A good, well-written strategy has the right level of details while staying high level. And writing it into a document format helps you achieve that. If you were to put it on a slide, you would essentially have about 10-15 slides. Mm-hmm. Each slide would be an answer to one of the FAQs. But the amount of text that you would be able to put in a slide would be 10 lines, 12 lines, at the most 15 lines. After that, it becomes completely unreadable. The second thing that is very commonly practiced at Amazon and all of these companies that have adopted the culture of writing 6 pages is this concept of starting a meeting with complete silence.
When you're reading it, right?
When you're reading it. First 20-25 minutes, you're not doing anything else but just reading it.
Isn't it like first time when you join in this kind of meeting, it looks creepy, like people sitting and reading?
It does. I found it creepy when I first joined Amazon. I was just used to somebody getting up on stage or getting up in front of a room full of people and talking through slides and all of that. I was totally used to that. And it was very unnerving. But then I understood the value of it. So just imagine if you were told, you have this document, you have this 6-page document for the next 25 minutes, you're putting your phone down, you're closing your laptop, all you're doing is focusing on this. Mm-hmm. You would read it properly because your undivided attention is on the document, as opposed to having somebody stand in front, walking through slides where you don't even have an opportunity to actually pause. Because, when somebody is in a flow talking through a slide, sometimes you even have a problem trying to pause this person to ask some question. Or the speaker says, all right, wait till the end to answer, wait till the end. And now you are trying to write down, while the person is talking, you're trying to figure out which question to write down and how.
Yeah, while you're writing down.
While you're writing down, this person is talking about the next slide. And so you miss a bunch of things like that. So there's a lot of value in this. And nearly 12 years at Amazon have taught me that there is no better way to actually do it than through a 6-page document. What I will also say is people sometimes get confused and caught up about this whole 6-page concept. So there is no logic or there is no science behind 6 pages. This was literally something that Jeff Bezos came up with. He said that I want to write documents. I want people to write their thoughts down, and I want to talk about that. So the first few times when they did that at Amazon, the documents were 20 pages long, 25 pages long, 30 pages long. And then they soon realized that you have to have some sort of a limit.
Yeah.
If you don't, then it's going to be completely unmanageable. So he randomly just came up with this thing saying that, all right, your main document cannot be more than 6 pages.
Main meaning there are some other documents that you...
No, so what we do is, so when I say main document, the part that everybody has to read. And then what they do is they attach something called as an appendix with a lot of the
additional
details. Correct. And then what you do is in your main document, you put a reference to the appendix saying, all right, more details about this issue are in appendix 10. So if you want more details, you can go and look at that. So in your main document, you essentially provide the summary for most part, and you attach the details in the appendix. That way it forces you to keep the main document at 6 pages. It's a good forcing function because then you are constantly thinking about what is important for my reader. What should I have my reader read instead of just throwing all the information there? What should I have them read? What should I have them focus on? And what should I put in the appendix?
And after those 20 minutes, the rest part of the meeting is spent on the questions, right?
Correct. That's exactly what it is. So obviously, pre-COVID, everybody used to be in the office. We would meet in conference rooms and everybody would have a hard copy in front of them, and they would write down questions in the document on the hard copy. And then you would start asking people, what's your feedback, and so on. And these days, obviously, since most things are done online, like post-COVID, you just write it into like a Google Doc, and people add their comments, and you just start going comment by comment.
And how the decision then is made? Like, okay, you had this 20 minutes of reading, then some part of meeting talking on the questions, and then the decision-making process on that document. How is it made?
Usually what happens is if a decision needs to be made, my recommendation is to carve out the last 5 to 10 minutes to just make sure that you get to that point. The discussion can happen for the remainder of the time. So let's say you have a 90-minute meeting. Let's say you spend 25 minutes to read. And if something needs to be formalized in that meeting, I would keep 10 minutes aside, discuss the comments for the remainder of the time. But then once you hit the last 10 minutes of the meeting, you as the person who's chairing the meeting or the organizer, or if you're the host, then I would stop the discussion saying that, guys, we are done. We don't have any more time to go through the rest of the comments, but we do need to decide on this one subject on this call. So let's do that. That is how I would do it.
And the culture of the decision making in Amazon, is it like a consensus type of culture? So when all the people in the room, they have to agree, or the biggest boss in the room can decide, or how is it?
It just depends on what sort of an operational review it is. At Amazon, they have this concept of an operating plan review, which is like an annual review of the entire business and the business units, which happens once every year. And for those sorts of meetings, it's usually a plan of that business unit for the following year. And those reviews tend to happen with the where you require approval of the top manager who's in the room. And then you say, all right, here's my plan. Here's what I plan to do with these many people. Do you approve that plan? And those sorts of reviews are usually, yes, I approve. I think I'm on board, or no, this needs to be changed, and I'd like you to come back with a revision of this plan and show me something else, that sort of thing.
So another thing in Amazon that's still not that clear, I would say, for regular people, is a bar raiser concept.
Yes.
Tell us about the bar raiser, what the logic stays behind, and how exactly Amazon using it now.
Yeah, so the bar raiser concept was basically born from the recruiting efforts at Amazon. Right. And so the logic there was, we want to make sure that we are hiring the right people for the company that we know will succeed because they believe in the culture of the company, or they're able to embrace the culture of Amazon. They believe that the best way to do this is to have a completely independent interviewer in the loop who's not attached to the team that is trying to hire the person. So usually a bar raiser at Amazon is somebody from outside the team that is trying to hire a resource. And this person's views on the candidate are completely unbiased. If you have a bar raiser from the same team, then you're inclined as a bar raiser to hire this person because you desperately want to hire someone, let's say.
Definitely.
So that's why you get somebody from the outside. The bar raisers at Amazon go through what they call as bar raiser like certification. They shadow bar raisers, and you have to do a certain number of interviews to be able to qualify as a bar raiser. Like you need to be an expert in trying to get the right level of details out of the candidate in a really short period of time. At the recruiting process at Amazon, usually what happens is each interviewer is given between 2 to 3 leadership principles that they have to assess. And that is what, going back to the point that I made earlier, again, the reason why they're able to keep the culture is because their day-to-day language in that company is based on the leadership behaviors. So let's say if you and I were in a loop, we were trying to hire a back-end developer at Amazon. You and I are in the loop. The hiring manager would assign 2 leadership behaviors to you, and he would assign just randomly, based on the strengths. Yes. So let's say he'd say that, okay, I want you to assess candidate on dive deep and think big, and then he'd give me two other ones. This way, each interviewer is assigned some of the key leadership principles that you want this new candidate to be able to show after they join Amazon. And so just based on that, our questions, like your questions would be focused on the 2 leadership principles you were assigned. My questions would be focused on the 2 that I was assigned. And then when you do the debrief, you can very clearly talk to that saying that, okay, this candidate's dive deep was good because he gave me these examples of why it was deep.
It's interesting because a lot of companies, they probably misusing it or use it in different ways, because what I heard is that they using the term of the bar raiser when you basically assessing the tech skills of the candidate or the professional skills of the candidate, and you are ensuring that he is like better than the at least 50% of the our existing employees working in the same role. If he is better than 50% of them, that he is raising the bar, so we are hiring him to help us to grow the skills. And according to what you just said, the Amazon using it completely different way.
No. Actually, no. It's no. So let me just rephrase. That is actually the reason why you have the bar raiser program. So there are 2 main reasons for it. One is to get a completely unbiased
opinion
assessment of the candidate from somebody outside that team.
Yeah.
The second main reason is to make sure that this person that we're bringing in the company is in fact raising the bar of the existing team. So you're right. They need to be at least better than the 50% of people that we have on the team right now. That is how they assess it.
How do they check in it? I mean, literally, at the end of the day, you have to say it like, okay, we assessed him it, and he is somehow like 49% better than the others. It means probably that you have to be able to assess every single person in a company, and for every single person in the company, you have to check their existing level, and then on the same scale, on the same type of assessment, you are assessing the candidate, and then you are matching them, right?
But that's the beauty of it, right? They have a very, very specific and set grading system in the company. And so when you're trying to hire, let's say you're trying to hire a candidate as a middle backend developer.
Okay.
Middle backend developer has a specific grade, and it's very clear in terms of what is expected from this grade. And so the hiring manager himself, when he's trying to hire someone, already knows what the bar really is in his or her team for that grade. And depending on the questions and the answers of the candidate, you're very easily able to assess if this person is meeting that 50% bar or not.
So the bar is set on a team level, right? Not on a company level.
Yeah. No, bar is set on the team level because you are trying to hire a candidate in a specific team.
Okay, moving on. We want to talk about the product management. So let's start with the probably simplest thing here. What the definition of a product of yours? How would you define the product in a modern product companies?
When you talk about online platforms, online retail, classifieds market, a product is any feature that you use on the platform. So shopping cart that you have on any of these websites is a product. The recommendations that you see on the front page, that's a product. The search bar that you see on top, that's a product. So every single feature or functionality that you see on the platform can be called a product.
There is a concept, probably not in the online business, but let's say in the banks. And banks these days, they do a lot of stuff in digital. And in banks, there is a concept that product should be, let's say, as big as possible. Imagine the retail banking. In retail banking, you have like the debit cards, the credit cards,
Correct.
the loans and
Correct.
deposits and this stuff. Back in the years, like 10 years ago, they started to call a product for, let's say, the specific type of a credit card. It was called a product.
Yes.
And then the product team was formed around this specific type of a credit card with a product manager, with a strategy, blah, 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 blah. And then in the whole retail banking of this bank, there was like, I don't know, dozens of those teams. And the problem was that at the end of the day, they were struggling to, align the strategies between each other. And they were trying to protect their small part of the biggest product. And then they started to move to the product as big as possible. Can you somehow comment on that and how it correlates with the fact that you said that the search bar here is also the product?
If you talk about banking for a second, and I have experience in online payments at Amazon, it is right to think of a credit card or a credit card offer. Let's say, Amazon does all these credit cards like a Prime card with a specific bank or a store or what have you. It's right to think of that as a product, because at the end of the day, like you just said, you want to have a strategy behind that because you want to grow that product, right? I mean, it's a small product. You just launch it. You want to grow that product. For you to be able to do that, you need to have strategy built out for that. And you have to have a team behind it. And they are the ones who are tasked to make sure that you grow the penetration of that product, in the market. So it's right to think of it like that. It's right to think of it as these different components, debit cards, credit cards, services that are offered as individual products, to be able to focus on them rather than say that, I'm just going to have this one big product called credit cards and then everything is a mishmash in that. The focus can be on those products. The question of the size is irrelevant to a large extent. Whatever you start for the first time is always going to be small, but the point is for you to be able to put enough horsepower and team behind it to be able to grow it with the right strategy in place. The reason why I say this is because it helps me focus. When I think of the search bar as a product, it helps me focus on what else I can do to make that better. Just the search bar. That is the reason why in companies like Amazon, there are dedicated teams that are focused only on the specific aspects of the product. There is a search team. The job of the search team is to just only focus on the search. Think of the search improvements that can be made. Make sure that the search is relevant. Make sure that the search is the fastest that you can get. And that is a common component across all the e-commerce sites of Amazon all over the world. It's important. It takes you back to this one other thing that they do very well at Amazon is single-threaded leadership, is having leaders that are single-threaded. Their only job is to optimize on this one specific product and grow that one specific product.
With that small taxonomy, what helps them to stay on the same page, stay aligned every time? What you just said, that you in Amazon are responsible for a very specific, very concrete piece of product, and there are like dozens of the people like you, and you have to, dance in the same rhythm. You have to do everything aligned, let's say. What helps them to keep it?
It's having the right processes in place, building out the right level of APIs. So specifically, if you are like responsible for a product like search, which is pretty much, which touches almost every single thing on the platform, then they've built out the right processes to make sure that everybody in the company knows that there is this one central search team that manages the search product. And the search team has built, through the years, has built out really good set of APIs that all these other teams use to interact with search. They're also very good about communicating changes that happen in these major teams. They have this concept of office hours, which is, I'm sure, common across many of the tech companies in the world, where people are invited to go and talk to the search team, ask them as to what improvements are being made, how some of the bugs are being fixed and things like that. So they take all of these processes really seriously and make sure that communication internally is strong at any given point in time.
Okay, moving on, the product manager role. Once again, your definition of the person who is acting as a product manager in a big tech company, or not just in a tech company, and what are the key skills you are looking for when someone is asking you to help with the hiring of another product manager?
I would say three things here. First and foremost, I look for somebody who is customer obsessed, who is able to put himself or herself in the shoes of the customer and is able to think back from there. That is extremely important. Second really important skill is stakeholder management. A good product manager knows how to manage the technology teams, knows how to manage the business stakeholders very effectively. And the third really important thing that I would say is a good product manager should have the ability to think beyond his or her product.
Makes sense, but the one question probably here, can you give me an example? How do you assess the customer obsession in the frame of the interview process?
I usually ask them very pointed questions. When was the last time you looked at customer feedback and made changes based on that? Very simple question.
Yeah.
And depending on the answer that they gave me, I'm able to easily assess whether they've actually done this or not. A lot of the candidates would obviously say, "Oh yes, I did it just last month." Okay, great. What did you do? Specifically, I looked at feedback that was sent to me by a customer. How did you get that feedback? I got it through the customer support channel. Okay. So my next question would be, so you do pay attention to that? Do you join calls with the support team? And then the answer, like the right answer would be yes. Once every month, I get on the phone with customer support, listen to live conversations, and take feedback from that. So those are the things that I really want to hear from people, that they are engaged, that the product manager candidates are engaged with end customers. They know what the pain points are, and then they work to try and fix them.
And now I'm curious about the stakeholder management. How do you assess that?
When was the last time you had a disagreement with your technology partners on a problem that you were trying to fix? What was that situation? When was the last time you had to convince your tech team to fix a bug that was urgent when they had 10 other things on their roadmap that they were focused on? Sure. These specific questions, asking the candidate to give me examples will help me assess whether they actually are doing this or not.
Getting back to you, do you remember your biggest fail as a product manager or in the role of the executive in the area of product management? Can you share it with us somehow?
First of all, I'll say that failure is a part of learning.
That's true.
If you don't fail, then you're not learning. It is really as simple as that. So anybody who tries to say that, no, I never fail, is probably, that probably is the wrong answer. Yes. I've had my share. I'll quote things from Amazon, in terms of trying to come up, when I was in China, when the question was to build a Prime program. So about the Prime program at Amazon. It started, first concept of Prime was to provide 2-day free shipping in the US. Right, that is how it started. And then slowly but surely, they've added a lot more to the Prime program to make it really attractive. So one of the first things that we were doing when we said, okay, let's launch the Prime program in China. So one of the first things was, obviously, you take what you have launched in Europe and the US, let's take that and let's apply it to the market in China.
Sure.
And clearly, that was not the right strategy to go in with that, because the Chinese market is very different from the market in the US. Back at that point in time, in the US, Prime Video had already been launched. That was part of the Prime program. In China, we didn't have the ability to do that. So the Prime program itself was not that compelling. Plus, in a place like China, free delivery, almost standard. Not just free, same day was standard. Free same day was standard. So again,
launch in the 2 days, right?
And you're thinking that, I'm going to start with a 2-day launch and I'll try to figure out how it works and then we'll optimize and make it one day. That's a non-starter. Things like these are really important because, again, going back to what I said earlier, customer obsession. You need to be very clear on what the customer is looking for or what new benefits are you bringing to your end customers before you actually try and do something or just design something. It just goes back to that. So that's one example of us trying to take a program like Prime, which was successful in the US, slapping it in China and trying to see if it sticks or not. Second example, I'll give you again from the Chinese market was Amazon entered China through by buying a company that was an online bookseller. Amazon's standard was to essentially take the look and feel of the US website and like replicate it all over the world. So that when you go to the Amazon page, whether in Germany or UK or US or even China for that matter, you're familiar with what the what the main page looks like, essentially. Again, we fail to assess what the Chinese customers actually look for, which is they're used to Taobao, Alibaba, where they're bright colors, red. They use a lot of red
means okay,
flash,
green
flash,
means,
like flashy stuff, massive ads, high resolution ads on the main page. They like all of that. And us taking the look and feel of Amazon and putting it on the main page in China didn't really go down that well. You may have a really strong brand in one country, but then when you're trying to replicate that brand, you need to first take into account what the locals in that new country really like and value. And you need to be able to tweak thing that has been a success in one country to make it fit in the new country that you're trying to go to.
Which brings us to the topic of the product discovery. And from my experience working with different companies as a consultant, I see that that's probably would be one of the biggest pains, let's say, in the companies, because they normally try and, they are good with the product delivery part.
Yes.
These days, everyone pretty much knows how to build the normal product development, but with the discovery, with the stuff like talking to the customer and trying to test a hypothesis, making those hypotheses at least like formulated, making the A/B tests, a lot of companies failed with that for some reason. How do you think why this happens, and what can help the company to to build this product discovery part?
Okay, so that actually interestingly brings me to a different favorite topic of mine. When we talked about 6 pages and writing the frequently asked questions and all of that, one thing that I didn't mention back then was this whole concept of press releases.
Okay,
it's actually very simply put. A press release is a press release, which is pretty standard. When you launch a new product in the market, you put out like a press release that tells everybody what you're doing and why you're doing it. I encourage my product managers to write the press release of a new product even before they've started coding or discovery, even before that. What I ask my product managers to do is write a 1-page press release on what you will tell your customers when you launch this product. The product could be 1 year out, it could be 2 years out, it doesn't really matter. But I want to see the press release. Before showing me anything about a new product, show me the press release.
Imagine it's ready, right?
Imagine it's ready. And what are you going to say to everybody? And this again is an excellent forcing function to make a product manager think. Because when you write a press release, you're working backwards from the customer. You're writing a press release for the customers.
Sure.
You're not writing a press release for yourself or your manager.
Yeah.
You're writing it for them. So if you bring that sense right off the bat, it really helps people to focus and think very hard. And usually what I ask them to do is, I say, write a press release. We usually call it mock press release. It's not really true. It's a mock, but it forces you. And within the press release, I ask them to write mock quotes, like one quote from me as the top manager in the company, one quote from me that says why this is exciting for the market. And at least 2 quotes from the end customers. And like these are all fake. These are all mock. But again, it forces you. It forces you to think very hard on what the product is and why it's important.
Yeah, and probably many products are not even going to be launched after those press releases, right?
Exactly. Because if you can't get your press release right, then there is no point in even trying to do anything beyond that. A lot of times what happens is the discovery process that you brought up, extremely important, but this would be part of the discovery process. Writing a press release, writing your frequently asked questions, bringing that to your manager or to your colleagues or peers or your stakeholders, showing it to them would be a good test to see whether what you're thinking is even worthwhile or not.
For starting to code something, stop and think and write something.
Very important.
Yeah.
Very, very important to make sure that what you're thinking through is in fact valuable to the end customers. I mean, there's so many platforms, so many services. There are companies and people that are constantly thinking of making these even better. And so in this day and age especially, you need to be very creative to be able to like disrupt the market. Like you know, your ideas need to be pretty out there. So it's important to vet it, in this form.
Sure.
In this fashion.
CTOs and CPOs, Chief Technology Officer and Chief Product Officer. What the way you see those two roles work together their best? Like how the company should set it up in terms of the responsibilities and the authority behind those two roles. And another thing is that some companies are now trying to come up with the combination of those two in one CPTO guy responsible for both. Also interesting to hear what you think about that.
I think the roles and responsibilities between a chief product officer and a chief technology officer are fairly clear. At least based on my experience, the chief product officer is primarily responsible to make sure that product management aspects, the design, UX, UI, analytics, and functions of that nature are taken care of. That's the job, that's the organization that typically reports into the chief product officer. Product, obviously, as you know really well, and as most folks know, forms sort of a bridge between the business stakeholders and the technology teams. They are the ones who take the business requirements, crystallize them for the tech teams to actually go and do the work. And then, they are the ones who make sure that the key metrics that we were expecting from products, we are able to meet them. And if something needs to be changed, they are the ones who drive that change forward, constantly getting feedback from the end customers and trying to improve the product. Technology, CTO clearly manages all of the tech resources, responsible for the tech strategy, making sure that the development time is as optimized as possible. So I think these two roles itself, depending on the size of the organization. To answering your other question, it's really interesting to see that these two roles are being morphed together as a CPTO. And I think it's interesting. I'm not opposed to it. I clearly am not, especially if you're able to find a leader who has the technology background and has the business-driven sense to be able to do both. I think it could be a very good combination for some companies that don't really need to have two separate roles for these.
Yeah, because that's the question of in let's say in a lot of companies there is a natural conflict between those two. Like the tech guy is normally saying like you don't know what you want or you don't know what you're doing, and the product guy is saying like okay, your developers are lazy, hire another ones, and there is a conflict, there is a clash. And one thing behind the CPTO concept is that probably it will help with this clash, but the other question is where to find them, because
it definitely is not an easy role to fill. The thing that you have to think about also is an effective CPTO, the person should be an expert both in product and technology, and you need to be able to earn respect from both product leaders and technology leaders in that role. So clearly, yes, it's not easy role to fill, but at the same time, again, like I said, depending on the company, if you find the right candidate, I think it could be a very interesting proposition.
Many leaders trying to foster the innovation culture in their companies and in their product teams. Where would you recommend to start with if your company is not that innovative at the moment, but you want to foster it to the different level?
I would start by answering, what can we do to delight our end customers? How do we anticipate the needs of our end customers before they even know that they want something? That is where I would start. What's missing in the market? What can I see and learn from some of the other markets and potentially bring to the table here? That is how I would think about it. I think it's very important that innovation starts again from the end customers, because at the end of the day, you're trying to innovate for your customers because you want to grow your business. Yeah. And the only way you're going to grow your business is by getting more customers, by making sure that the customers that come to your platform are very, very happy, and to be able to attract people that don't come to the platform because you're offering something that nobody else is or you're offering something that's in the market, but it has a better value.
Oh, it's cheaper.
Or cheaper, or something to that effect, or it has something extra, for that matter. So any sort of innovation, again, work back from the customers. What is it that they need or will want in the future, and figuring out can we give them that right now?
Okay, one will ask you how practically and what should I do to anticipate the need of the customer? I mean, should I somehow, get a crystal ball and think on it, or should I ask the people what you would probably want in a year or two?
Look, the easiest way is to using common sense, looking out in the market and seeing what are people doing. Really, this is not rocket science, clearly, at the end of the day. If you go and look in your local market, if you go and look at some of the international markets to try to understand what are your peers doing, not just locally, but all over the world. Are they trying to bring something new to the market? The second way is to talk to your customers. Simply talk to your customers. Talk as much as you possibly can. Get feedback from them. What would they like more? What would they like better? A lot of the times, you won't believe, some of the best feedback that I've gotten is from my friends and my family. Products that I have launched in the US, elsewhere. Like just having them go and try something out, and they'd come back to me and say, well, if had you instead of the drop down, had you the design of that in a different form or fashion, it would have been easier for me to pick things.
Even though the friends and family are normally biased because
Correct.
They like you and they don't want to tell you the bad news.
No. The important thing is to actually have your friends and family be as honest as they can be.
Sure.
And I think that can easily be done. I mean, you go to your friend and say, I'm trying to get this out in the market. Please be brutally honest with me.
Yeah.
Because you're my friend, please be brutally honest and tell me what I can improve. I'm sure you'd get really good feedback from that.
Now, the next one. Who has been your biggest mentor, or somehow the biggest, let's say, the most important person in your professional life who influenced on you and shaped your understanding of this product management stuff and the leadership?
I wouldn't point out one person. I've had the privilege of working with some really smart people at Amazon. Really, clearly, I've studied Jeff Bezos in detail in terms of how he started, what was the culture of the company when it was first started, and how it became what it became. So I've used that quite a bit. Plus, working with some of the top managers at Amazon and working for them has taught me a lot. Combine that with the fact that I had the opportunity to go and live in China, in the UK, in Turkey, in the US, and having worked in markets like Asia and Europe quite extensively have taught me quite a bit. So I would say that that leaders, like I honestly am very, very particular about who I report to in an organization and who my peers and my stakeholders are, and how much I'm able to learn from them. That is very important to me. So any company that I talk to or join or have joined, for me, the bar has been, will I be learning here? And if the answer to that question, and obviously, will I be challenged here? If the answer to both those questions is yes, then I'm up for it.
How do you assess it prior to joining the company? How do you understand whether you'll be able to learn there or be challenged?
There is no foolproof way. There really isn't. A lot of it is just based on your gut. Like when I joined Amazon, clearly I knew a little bit about the company, but not a whole lot. Now, at least these days I do a lot more research on the company and the people. Back then I didn't, because as I said, I joined Amazon at the end of 2008, and it was a crazy time. If you remember,
2008, it's a crisis.
Exactly. We were in the middle of the crisis, and I was living in Florida, and Amazon was based out of Seattle in the US.
Yeah.
And the housing crisis and all of that, companies were failing, Wall Street was in a mess.
Yeah.
And I took the gamble. I applied just randomly, sitting in Florida one day. It's a funny story. The vice president of the company I was working for asked me to go and do some research on online returns. And I knew that Amazon.com was the number one player at that point in time. So I went to Amazon.com and started doing some research in the night one day, trying to put together some slides for him on this is how the process works on Amazon.com.
Uh-huh.
And I inadvertently clicked on the careers page on Amazon. And I started scrolling through. It was night, and my kids were little; they were sleeping and all that. I just started scrolling through, and I saw this ad. And on a hunch, I didn't even have my CV ready. On a hunch, I just said, "Hey, that's interesting. Looks like wow, that's really exciting." I went and applied, and it was they were so quick with the whole hiring process and the looping and all of that within a 6 to 7 week period, they had me come to Seattle for 2 days worth of on-site interviews. Within 8 weeks, I had an offer. What also impressed me at that point in time is the fact that they were clear on what they wanted. Like they weren't going back and forth, because it happens. I'm sure people have really experienced that. You have your first interview. Sometimes it takes a long time for the second interview. You don't hear back from the recruiting team of the company. You're not really sure what's happening. But that wasn't Amazon. It was, they were extremely clear. They knew what they wanted. And they were very fast and they were very deliberate, which is what I appreciated.
Because I heard that Amazon recruiting process these days is like months and dozens of interviews, and it's like it may take you like up to a year.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure what it is now, but back then it was at least at the end of 2008, it was 3 phone interviews. And then after the 3 phone interviews, they would fly you up to Seattle. There would be a full day of in-person interviews with at least 8 or 9 people.
Wow.
Separate.
That's crazy.
One of those would be a bar raiser, but you as a candidate wouldn't know who's the bar raiser, obviously,
yeah, sure.
Because they don't come into the conference room and say, I'm the bar raiser. And then they would do a debrief. And, within a week, they came back and said, we are very interested, putting together an offer. Second week, I had the offer.
So you had a day full of stress, like 9 interviews in a day.
Oh, yeah. That's a typically very long day. They don't do any case presentations. At least back then they didn't. And I didn't. All the hiring I did, I followed the same process.
That's interesting. 2 questions left here, and we are normally asking all of our guests those 2 questions. Interesting to get to you with them. So the first one, imagine me being your direct report in any kind of role. What would be the reason for you to fire me?
That's an interesting one. I'll start by saying that, the first and foremost reason, if you are violating the code of conduct of the company in any form or fashion, those would be grounds for firing immediately. And then the second thing I would say is if I'm consistently seeing underperformance despite proper feedback and I'm seeing complaints from stakeholders on performance issues, that would be the second thing.
How long would it take for you to, let's say, let me try to improve?
I've usually put underperformance on improvement plans for a quarter. For any manager, it's a very painful process because if you need to put together a performance improvement plan for any employee, then you need to track it very carefully. It needs to be well thought through, very detailed. You have to stay on top of it. You have to set goals and milestones almost on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, follow up with them, talk to stakeholders to see if there's improvement. So it's a pretty intensive process, but I would put the performance improvement plan for no more than a quarter.
And what is, I think, also important here, that you have to believe in this person still.
Absolutely.
Normally, the problem is when starting with this performance improvement plan that internally you already decided you already want to fire him, but then you are trying to follow up the formal process, and then there's no chance.
Yeah, I've seen both of those cases happen, to be honest with you. I've seen cases where yes, you've already made up your mind, but then you have to go through this formal process, and yes, you still have to do it. And I've also seen a lot of cases where people come out from performance improvement plans as stronger and much better people.
That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. And the last one, how would you define the great team? What is your definition of the great team?
I think a great team is a group of people that are that love what they do, that love working with each other, that the team that truly believes in what they are doing. When you get that combination, almost like a family unit of people that are willing to back each other, help each other, work with each other, and that believe in the cause of the team and the company, that is a great combination. Then you don't have to force people to do things a certain way because they believe in the cause. They will naturally do better.
So for me, it was really interesting. thank you for this sharing and for being here and for this quite intensive talk, I would say. Hopefully we will once again sometime.
Of course.
And now that would be it. Thank you guys for watching us, and now we'll get back on the next video soon. Shares, likes from you here on YouTube, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.